I believe in the Rockford, Illinois area lawmakers push to ban or I believe in the banning, but just the general regulation of Kratom and 7-OH products within the United States. If you watch African news, you would be aware of how many people every year die to the abuse of kratom related products. I was a child, I was a little boy in the early 2000s, and I read any copy of National Geographic or like Nature magazine that I was ever around. Like, I read the old magazines we had in like the little bookshelf that were from like the 90s and all that. And a lot of the times that Africa was highlighted in those magazines, they would also talk about the presence and use of drugs within Africa. And kratom was regularly brought up because of how dangerous it was and how many people died or lost their lives every year to like the abuse of the drug and like how the drug affects your body. And I find it really like mind blowing, really shocking that there is no like regulation or lawmaker awareness around the drug, the substance, considering how ubiquitous it is now and how long it's actually been in like American consciousness. Because again, I was reading about this as like a little boy in the early 2000s. I was born in 2001. So it's like kind of clueless. Uh, we live in a world where, President Trump, the president of the United States of America, is pushing for renovations to the White House, the extension of the White House ballroom. He's pushing for the invasion of Venezuela, while the USDA has been arguing that kratom related products should be given a Schedule 1 classification, like substances like heroin, because of how dangerous, addictive, and mind altering they can be. Like, this to me represents that like his revived war on drugs is a facade, a ghost in the opera. Like, it's just that fake because we're neglecting the real war on drugs that like other federal administrations are desperately trying to warn us about and get our attention for. I will repeat my feelings on the invasion of Venezuela, that it is going to be a complete disaster, that it will be worse than the conflict in Vietnam because not only will American troops be fighting in jungles in like unknown terrain in conditions they don't want to be in nor are comfortable to be in, but this time the enemy also has the GPS technology that we used to topple the Saddam Hussein regime in the Gulf War. Like, if you've done reading or research into the Gulf War, one of our main technological advantages over the Iraqi regime was that in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert, US and allied coalition troops and tanks still knew where they were because of GPS technology. But this time, the Iraqi troops, the Vietnamese troops, the Venezuelan troops also know exactly where they are in the jungle because we're all using the same GPS technology. I believe that because we will now be on equal footing with an enemy, that this will be a complete slog of a conflict. I believe that the Chinese government is already supplying arms and armor to the Venezuelan troops. I've had the opinion that if you were to watch the Chinese National Day parades, you would notice over the years that the weapons, technology, missiles, laser, like naval laser weaponry, has changed that they've been displaying, and that they've been like steadily cycling out this retired equipment from the early 2000s into other aligned coalition groups in the way that America is part of NATO, the North Atlantic Trade Organization. Countries like Brazil, India, China, Russia have what is called BRICS, BRICS. And because Brazil is part of the BRICS organization, they probably have storehouses of this decommissioned Chinese weaponry that they will start supplying to Venezuelan military once U.S. troops land in amphibious vehicles. And I believe that the war will only get more grueling and protracted because of the unsuccessful nature of it. Once it has become public awareness that America is like failing in the war, that we're not going to be home by Christmas, I believe President Trump will start firing the generals in charge of it. And this will be like a top down cascade effect where they will be replaced with more incompetent, pick me, yes man type military career people who will only be worse at their job. But instead of firing them, because that would be admitting personal fault from President Trump, he will just continue to fire other generals that were appointed previously before him, and those will be the competent ones. And the more competent generals are fired, the more troops we will lose, the more protracted the war will get, and the worse American diplomatic and international standing will become.